Hello fellow preppers, I'm Tara. Today we're going to be using vodka, perhaps the mortar and pestle, handy dandy little cheap funnel, and a whole bunch of seeds and white fluffy things that hold on to the seeds. I believe it's called pulpus, to make an extract of milk thistle. You can also adapt this recipe easily, as the article states, to make a tincture instead of an extract. Okay folks, the first thing you need to do when you're making a tincture is you need to very carefully try to pull out the seeds or the white fluff if you're using it both. Some folks do, some folks only use the seeds. Either way, this is extremely prickly. That's why when you harvest it, you definitely want to make sure you're wearing work gloves. Wish that they weren't as thick as they are so I could continue to wear them now, because I'm sure I have slivers all over my fingers. These are the little tiny seeds. Get them up here close so you can see them. About the size of a tick you would miss if you came in from the woods. Very, very small. You can grind them up or you can put them in whole. It might speed up the processing a little bit if you grind them up. I'm trying to get a couple in my hand here so you can see them better. But this is how you pull them off. You just hold the white fluff up, trying to eliminate as much white fluff as you can if having it infused in your tincture is going to bother you. Depends on how much patience you have. This is not a quick process. You can go ahead, I picked a whole sack full of these last night in under 10 minutes, but getting the seeds out is a whole nother story. I'll go ahead and put my seeds in here, and there are exact measurements on here, but you really just want to make sure you have a large amount because you will not have any medicinal properties had you not used that. I have no problem using the whole piece of it. Some folks will even use the leaves or chopped up bits of the root or the stem. The seeds are what are the most beneficial, and everything else you can strain out. I am so getting all kinds of little tinky tiny slivers. I'm going to be digging out of my hands for hours. But as you can see, I'll do another one here close up. Removing the white with the seeds attached to it takes only seconds. It just pops right out. This part you really have no use for, but it's getting the seeds off of it. And if you watched our milk thistle tea making video, you notice here's my sack here with all of my milk thistle I collected last night, probably about 30 different flower heads. Some folks, before they start the process of an extract, a tincture, or a tea, I don't like dealing with milk thistle because it hurts so badly, but I do because it is so beneficial. It's a great survival medicine in my opinion, though I am not a medical professional, but my family's used it for years. But you can take it and you can beat it down. Some people like to do that because it makes the white separate from the cone more. I find that the annoyance of getting pricked constantly, not quite as bad as stinging nettles, but close, does not outweigh. See how these are here and they're separated for me, so I don't have to touch the cone part of it, but I just as soon go ahead and have all those little pricklies to deal with, because if not, you're losing some of your seeds, make them more difficult to find because of the pounding, and then you are fishing all over your sack or your tray, whatever you have used, to find all the little white fluff. And sometimes when you pound on it, it just flies, and they're so tiny and fine you'll miss them. So I'm using a decent amount of the white fluff, and I have a fine mesh strainer that's going to remove it for me later. So I'm going to just put it in my jar. So I think I've got the right tablespoon amount. If you go a little bit over, it's just going to be a little bit stronger. I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. And next, all I have to do, I have my water already in my measuring cup. I'm going to pour it in. And I am doing equal parts water and vodka. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I missed a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put another dab in there. Because I've used the white fluff and it floats, I'm going to need to push it down. And sometimes you need to add a little bit more of the liquid because it can float to the top. But that's only an initial reaction, because after a brief amount of time, 30 minutes maybe, the little white fluff is going to get saturated and sink to the bottom. And I've actually found that at the end of your 5 weeks, it is fully separated from the seeds on its own, and it tends to float on top, and you can just scoop it out with your hands. If if you don't have a fine mesh strainer. So now that everything is in here, I'm going to give it some shakes, and I'm going to let it settle and make sure that I do not have way more solid material than I do the liquid. And it turned out just fine. It's just floating on top, but like I said, it's going to sink. And I'm going to put this in a cool, dark place. I'm going to shake it a little more. I'm going to put it in a cool, dark place for 5 weeks. And I'm going to shake it at least once every day and check the fluid levels. And if I'm seeing that this is not sinking as I thought, or it's become so swelled, and I've never had that happen, that I do not have enough liquid in there to keep everything saturated the whole time it's starting to dry out, then you can add again in equal parts of your vodka and your water, and go ahead and move on from there. If you find out that it's gotten really dried out, then you might want to add a whole nother week to your processing, just to make sure that everything has had time to leach out into the water. And once this is done, you're just going to strain it with a fine mesh strainer into another container, and you want to keep the liquid. That's the valuable part. And then you can just go put an amber bottle or another mason jar that's been cleaned and sterilized, and store it in a cool, dark place until you're ready to use it. In my experience, it stayed potent for up to 5 years, but that can vary. And as I said, I'm not a medical professional, so just because milk thistle is natural doesn't mean it's safe for anyone to use or everyone to use. So check with your doctor. Because I have endometriosis, I cannot use the milk thistle. But if you're a woman who's pregnant or nursing, if you've had uterine or breast cancer or fibroid tumors or cysts, you also should be very careful about using it. I would recommend not. Most definitely talking to your doctor about even handling it without perhaps medical gloves on, because this silymarin, I believe is how it's pronounced, that's the primary active ingredient in the milk thistle, mimics the effects of estrogen on your body. So it can have some harmful effects in some women. So I'm just going to let this settle now. It's easy peasy once you get done getting your fingers pricked and you pull out all the seeds. And you can make a whole bunch of it up in the early fall when you've harvested your milk thistle. And you'll have plenty to stockpile on your shelves for hopefully years to come.